With that, however, we are going to go into today's presentation. As I mentioned, this is going to discuss some information regarding New York State's paid family leave with a specific focus on military-related leave. And since its implementation in 2018, paid family leave benefits have been significantly enhanced to further improve the lives of working New Yorkers and their families, including providing more time off, more uses for paid family leave, and more financial security. So in today's presentation, we are going to start by discussing why we need paid family leave, and then cover some of the basics you need to know, including the 3 original uses of paid family leave, an overview of the benefits, how much it costs, who's eligible, and steps you need to take to request paid family leave for military service. We'll review some frequently asked questions about this type of leave. We'll point you to some helpful resources, and then, as I mentioned, we will leave time at the end to answer any questions you have. But to start, we want to go over why do we need paid family leave? Too long, employees have struggled to maintain their jobs when they need to care for a loved one during a specific time of need. Whether that's welcoming a new baby, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, or dealing with the family pressures when a loved one is deployed abroad on active military service. More recently, during the pandemic, some employees were challenged by needing to quarantine due to COVID-19. So we also put in some implementations regarding that. We will briefly discuss those. But employees in these situations do face the stress of losing income when they need to take time off to help their family, and also fear their job may be gone when the family situation is over. So in response to these needs, New York took action. April of 2016, New York paid family leave, which is the nation's strongest and most comprehensive paid family leave policy, was signed into law. Paid family leave is employee-funded insurance that helps employees be there for their family when they're most needed. And because of paid family leave, workers across New York no longer have to choose between caring for their loved ones and their jobs, since we now have employee-paid insurance to help in these critical times. Paid family leave provides job-protected paid time off, so you can bond with a newly born, adopted, or foster child, care for a family member with a serious health condition, or assist loved ones when a spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent is called abroad to active military service. Under legislation signed into law in March of 2020, paid family leave does provide paid time off and job protection, so employees can care for themselves or for their minor dependent child when under a mandatory order of quarantine of isolation due to COVID-19. The order must be issued by the state of New York, the Department of Health, the local Board of Health, or any government entity duly authorized to issue such order due to COVID-19. We would like to note that this legislation is going to expire on July 31st of 2025. And if you want more information, you can go to the website at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. In addition to paid time off, New York's paid family leave also has strong employee protections. You are guaranteed to return to the same or a comparable job after taking paid family leave. A comparable job is defined as a position with comparable employment benefits, pay, and other terms and conditions of employment. You are guaranteed continuation of health insurance while out on paid family leave on the same terms as if you would continue to work. If you contribute to the cost of your health insurance, you must continue paying your portion of the premium while on leave. You are also guaranteed protection from discrimination and retaliation. Requesting or taking paid family leave cannot be held against you. So again, today we are going to be focusing on paid family leave as it's related to military deployments. So paid family leave benefits are available when you have a family member on active service abroad or who has been notified of an impending call or order of active service abroad and family assistance is needed. Eligibility for paid family leave for an active service deployment is the same as the military provisions of the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, otherwise known as FMLA. They cover your spouse, your child, your domestic partner, or a parent. There are a number of instances where paid family leave will help, as you can see here on your screen. Now, we know military deployment can be a stressful time for a service member and their family as they face the realities of what this means for them. Military leave allows employees to be present and provide support to their family during this time of need without having to worry about losing their job or financial security. Working military spouses already have a difficult time maintaining long-term employment due to moves, deployment, and childcare. Having paid family leave eases the financial strains, allowing military spouses to focus their time on both work and family, while service members can stay focused on their mission and worry less about how to pay bills. And when service members return from deployment for rest and recuperation leave, paid family leave gives families valuable time to reconnect. Now let's look at the specific benefits available to you under paid family leave. Eligible employees are able to take up to 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of their average weekly wage, capped at 67% of the New York State average weekly wage. An employee's average weekly wage is based on their last 8 weeks of pay prior to taking paid family leave. For 2024, the New York State average weekly wage is $1,718.15. So that means the maximum weekly benefit for 2024 is $1,151.16, which you can see right there on your screen. This is $20.08 more than the maximum weekly benefit from 2023. It is important to note employees can take this paid time off all at once or intermittently, but it must always be taken in full day increments. And to estimate your wage benefit, you can use the 2024 calculator, which is on the paid family leave website. You can see that link right there. As mentioned, paid family leave is fully funded through employee contributions. The contribution rate is reviewed annually, and it is subject to change by the New York State Department of Financial Services. In 2024, the payroll contribution is 0.373% of an employee's gross wages each pay period. The maximum annual contribution is $333.25. This is $66.18 less than in 2023. Employees earning less than the current New York State average weekly wage of $1,718.15 will contribute less than the annual cap of the $333.25, consistent with their actual wages. And to estimate your deductions, you can also use the 2024 payroll deduction calculator, which is also on our website. So to summarize the benefits and contributions for this year, the maximum weekly benefit has increased from $1,131.08 to $1,151.16. Also, as of January 1st, 2024, employers can deduct at the rate of 0.373% of an employee's gross wages each pay period, but capped at an annual maximum of $333.25. So now that we've covered the types of leave, the benefits, and the costs, let's now discuss who is covered and eligible for paid family leave. Most employees who work for private employers in New York State are covered under paid family leave. If you work for a public employer, your employer may opt into the program. If you're a public employee represented by a union, you may be covered if paid family leave is collectively bargained. Covered employees' eligibility for taking paid family leave depends on meeting specific requirements for the amount of time employees have worked for their employer. Full-time employees, including domestic workers, who regularly work 20 or more hours per week are eligible for paid family leave after 26 consecutive weeks of employment with the same employer. Part-time employees who work a regular schedule of less than 20 hours per week are eligible after working 175 days, which do not need to be consecutive. Citizenship or immigration status is not a factor in determining employee eligibility. Paid family leave coverage is not optional for eligible employees. You can waive coverage if you regularly work 20 or more hours per week, but won't be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks, or if you regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week and won't work 175 days in a 52-week period. Seasonal workers are a good example of this since they may work full-time, but they're only working for 3 months out of the year, so they would be eligible to waive coverage. If someone meets the criteria for waiving coverage, the employer must provide them with a waiver form, which is also available on the Paid Family Leave website. If you waive coverage, you will not make contributions and you will not be eligible for paid family leave benefits. And employers should keep a copy of your waiver on file. If your schedule changes, such as you no longer qualify for a waiver, the waiver will automatically be revoked within 8 weeks of the schedule change. You can also voluntarily revoke a waiver at any time. If your waiver is revoked, your employer will begin taking paid family leave contributions and collect any retroactive amounts due. So now we're going to cover how to request paid family leave for military-related leave, as well as how disputes and discrimination issues are handled. So when you are ready to request leave to care for military deployment, there are 3 basic steps. Step 1 is to notify your employer at least 30 days before the start of your leave if it's foreseeable, or as soon as possible. Step 2 is to complete the request forms, and step 3 is to send all the required forms to the insurance carrier. The insurance carrier must pay or deny your request within 18 calendar days of receiving the completed request, or the first day of leave, whichever is later. You must submit your completed request package to your employer's insurance carrier within 30 days after the start of your leave to avoid losing benefits. All right, so now let's take a look at each of these steps a little more in depth. Step 1, inform your employer. Let your employer know at least 30 days before your leave will start if it's foreseeable. So for example, you may be planning to take paid family leave immediately after you find out that your spouse is going to be deployed, or perhaps you want to choose to take it at a later date. You just want to make sure you notify your employer of the dates as soon as you know when that deployment is going to be and when you're going to want to request that leave. Step 2 is to complete the required paid family leave request forms. So for military leave, your request will contain 3 forms. First one, which is the request for paid family leave form PFL1, gives your insurance company information about you. The second form, which is the military qualifying event form PFL5, requires information about the military member on covered active duty or impending call to covered active duty status. If the request is to meet with a third party, you'll also have to fill out another section of Form PFL5, which is the template for documentation for a military qualifying event, and that is Form PFL5T. And you'll need this to provide supporting documentation of the meeting. You can get paid family leave request forms from your employer's insurance carrier, or directly from paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms. All right, so now let's take a look at Form PFL1, which is the request for paid family leave. Every employee who is requesting this or who is requesting paid family leave will start with this form. It asks just basic information about you and the leave you want to take, and it has a section for your employer to complete as well. So you'll submit this form to your employer's insurance carrier, along with the other completed forms for the type of leave you are taking. Form PFL-1 has two parts. You are responsible for filling out Part A, and your employer is responsible for filling out Part B. The first section of Part A covers your personal information, including your address, your social security number or your tax identification number, as well as your date of birth. You must also state why you are requesting the leave and how it pertains to you. Next, you're going to indicate if you expect your leave to be a continuous period or intermittent. You may not know all the dates for certain, so you can indicate that they are estimated, and then you can update your insurer if a change is needed. Finally, you must provide information about your employment, including your employer's location and phone number, your date of hire, your average gross weekly wage, whether you have more than one employer, if you are taking paid family leave from that other employer, and if you are currently receiving any workers' compensation lost wage benefits. You'll then need to sign and date Part A of the form and then give it to your employer, who will then complete Part B of the form. So before giving this form to your employer, make sure you make a copy of Form PFL-1. So your employer then has 3 business days to fill out Part B of Form PFL-1 and then return it to you. If they do not return the form, you can still proceed with your paid family leave request. So next, again, as I mentioned, you are going to then need to fill out the military qualifying event, which is Form PFL-5. You'll need to provide information about the military member on covered active duty or an impending call to covered active duty status, including the military member's name, date of birth, gender, mailing address, their relationship to you, the employee, the time frame of active duty, and the qualifying reason you are requesting paid family leave. In addition, you must also select which supporting document you will be attaching as proof that the military member is on covered active duty or an impending call to cover active duty status. Supporting documentation can be one of the following: a United States Department of Labor Military Family Leave certification. This is also called a federal military leave form, a copy of the military duty papers, or any other documentation supporting the reason for leave. For example, a copy of a meeting notice or any other meeting documentation, some ceremony details, or even rest and recuperation orders as well. You will need to include your name and date of birth on the top of the second page of the form and attest to whether or not you will be including supporting documentation with the form. And then lastly, you will sign and date the form. The final part of the form is the template for documentation for a military qualifying event, which is Form PFL-5T. And this is used to provide any supporting documentation when you are requesting paid family leave to meet with a third party. So for example, if you're meeting with a daycare facility or a financial counselor, you will want to make copies of this form and then use one for each meeting for which you're requesting paid family leave. To complete this form, you must first provide your name, date of birth, social security or tax identification number, and your mailing address. Next, you must submit the following information for each required meeting or event: the name of the individual you'll be meeting with, their title, the organization that they're with, any phone or fax numbers, their email address, and their mailing address. In addition, you must also describe the nature of the meeting and include the dates if you know them. Step 3 is to send all the forms to your employer's insurance carrier. Before submitting your forms, again, make sure you're making copies of the Form PFL-1 and Form PFL-5. You're going to submit forms PFL1, form PFL5, and form PFL5T to the employer's paid family leave insurance carrier, or if your employer is self-insured, you'll send them directly to your employer. The address can be found in Part B, Question 13 of Form PFL1, and this is the section that your employer completed. If the carrier's address is not on the form, you can either ask your employer, or you can contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303 for assistance. And the insurance carrier must pay or deny within 18 calendar days of receiving your completed request, or the first day of leave, whichever is later. If for some reason your paid family leave request is denied, or you have another claim-related dispute, such as the amount of benefits or timeliness of the carrier's decision, you may request to have the denial reviewed by a neutral arbitrator. Your insurance carrier, or your employer if they're self-insured, will notify you of the reason for denial, and then they will provide you with information about requesting arbitration. Arbitration for paid family leave is handled by NAM, which is National Arbitration and Mediation. And more information on arbitration is available on NAM's website, and you can see that link right there on your screen. As mentioned earlier, your employer may not discriminate against you for requesting or taking paid family leave, and you are guaranteed job protection with the same or a comparable job upon returning from paid family leave. If your employer does not return you to your same or a comparable job, terminates you, reduces your pay and or your benefits, or if they discipline you in any way as a result of you requesting or taking paid family leave, you can file a discrimination claim with the Workers' Compensation Board. An administrative law judge may order an employer to reinstate the employee, pay any lost wages, pay any attorney fees, and pay up to $500 in penalties. The process and forms are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, or again, you can call the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303. So we do get some frequently asked questions about paid family leave and other policies that may be helpful for you to know. So I just want to go over those real quick. The first, how are paid family leave and FMLA similar? So there are several similarities between New York's paid family leave and the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. Both provide leave for bonding with a child, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, and assisting when a family member is deployed abroad on active military service. You are guaranteed that you will return to the same or comparable position, and that your health insurance will continue on the same terms as if you had continued to work. If you contribute to the cost of your health insurance, you must continue to pay your portion of the premium cost while on leave. However, there are several key differences. First being that paid family leave is paid, whereas FMLA is not paid. Almost all private employers will carry PFL insurance. FMLA does not include insurance, and it has a 50 employee threshold for eligibility. The length of time you must work is also different. For PFL, if you regularly work 20 or more hours per week, you must be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks for that employer. And if you regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week, you must work 175 days for the same employer, which do not need to be consecutive. For FMLA, you must have worked for a full year and 1,250 hours in the last 52 weeks to qualify. The biggest distinction may be that under New York's paid family leave, you are taking leave to care for somebody else, not for your own health condition. Whereas with FMLA, you can take it to care for your own health condition. Paid family leave is also taken in full day increments, whereas FMLA can be taken hourly. And also under paid family leave, you do not need to use other paid time off first. Another question we get a lot is, what is needed to demonstrate a domestic partnership? Actually, we just had a webinar yesterday where someone asked this very question. You do not need to have a registered domestic partnership to take paid family leave to care for a domestic partner. Definition of the law is broad, and there are a number of factors that are looked at when determining whether a domestic partnership exists. These include, but are not limited to, common ownership of property, children in common, signs of intent to marry, shared budgeting, and the length of the personal relationship. For specific questions about what documentation you may need to submit to demonstrate a domestic partnership, you can always reach out to your employer's PFL insurance carrier. So as it pertains to military leave, can it be used to take time off to care for a service member's child? Military leave covers making arrangements for the military member's child, as well as urgent, non-routine child care by the family member. This includes circumstances when the covered active service or the call to covered active service status of the military member necessitates a change that may result in arranging for alternative child care. Providing child care for a child on an urgent, immediate need basis, enrolling in or transferring to a new school or a new daycare facility, or attending meetings with staff at a school or daycare facility. Ongoing routine childcare needs would not be covered. So, for example, an employee cannot take paid family leave to watch a service member's child during summer vacation, but that employee could take paid family leave to arrange for the childcare. Can you take paid family leave to care for an ill or injured service member or veteran? Yes, you can request paid family leave to care for an ill or injured service member or veteran in a family with a serious health condition. A serious health condition is defined as an illness, injury, or condition that requires either inpatient care in a hospital, hospice, or residential facility, or continuing treatment or supervision by a healthcare provider. Qualifying family members include your spouse, domestic partner, child, stepchild, parent, parent-in-law, step-parent, grandparent, or grandchild. How does paid family leave differ from benefits administered by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs? So the US VA benefit is a federal program, and that does not impact or affect any eligibility for paid family leave. Paid family leave for the care of an ill or injured family member who happens to be a veteran is different from the Veterans Affairs benefits in these ways. The benefit is for the employee as the caregiver helping the ill or injured family member. The illness or injury does not have to be service connected. The nature of the veteran's military discharge does not matter. And the illness or injury does not need a final diagnosis from the VA doctor or a VA rating to qualify. How do you plan leave when you don't know exact dates? If you don't know exact dates from when you'll need to take leave, inform your employer as soon as you do know when you'll be out. Complete and submit the forms and supporting documentation as soon as possible following the initial leave event. You have 30 days from the first day of leave to submit your completed request without losing benefits. If leave is taken intermittently, employers can require as much notice as possible before each day of intermittent leave. Form PFL-1 does allow you to list estimated dates. The estimated dates will alert the insurance carrier so it can inform you of any policies it has in place to notify the carrier when the exact dates are known. Also, please remember, PFL must be taken in full day increments, even if you're taking intermittently. Do you have to submit the entire form package each time you need leave? Submitting an entire form package each time you need leave will depend on each insurance carrier's processes and whether or not certification covers the entire period. Section 204(1) of the Workers' Compensation Law states that if the events are separated by more than 3 months, They are different qualifying events, and a new form package would likely be required. So as you think about how paid family leave may be able to help you and your family, we do have resources available to assist you. Complete details on paid family leave are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, along with other resources, including paid family leave request forms and fact sheets, weekly deduction and benefit calculators, updates for 2024, and information about paid family leave, quarantine leave benefits. If you're thinking about taking paid family leave soon, you can download the forms now and get started on filling them out. You can also contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303 for assistance. If you're not already subscribed for email updates on paid family leave, you can subscribe by clicking the Get Updates button on the bottom of the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov homepage. So that does it for this presentation. I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss PFL with you. And as promised, we are now going to take the rest of the time to answer any questions you may have. Again, if you look on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, see a little chat bubble. You can click on that, and the chat box will pop right up. Any questions you have, feel free to put it in the chat box. Please keep in mind that the board is unable to provide legal advice, which includes guidance about what you should do in specific situations. If you have specific questions or concerns about a request for paid family leave, you should be contacting your disability and your paid family leave insurance carrier, as they are the entity that makes the decision to pay or deny your benefits. Again, we do have a question that has come in. I'm going to hand everything over now to Courtney. She's going to take a look and answer the questions that have come in. But again, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box and Courtney will answer it.
Okay, so the first question we have here is, if we run PFL and FMLA concurrently, can we require the employee to apply for this benefit while they're taking leave? So when we talk about FMLA and PFL running concurrently, we mean available FMLA and PFL for the same qualifying event. So sometimes an employee might be eligible for PFL, but they're not eligible for FMLA. Sometimes they've used all 12 weeks of FMLA for like something like their own serious health condition, something like that, that doesn't qualify for PFL. And so in that case, like, they're not going to run concurrently because it's not for the same qualifying event and there's not available leave for both things. But if we're talking about the same set of leave, like the same reason for leave, and it's covered under both FMLA and PFL, the employer can require the employee to take them at the same time. And then in the regulations, so it's section 380-2.5 of the regulations, there are guidelines about an employer can designate them to be run concurrently. And if the employee decides, well, I'm just not going to apply for PFL, as long as the employer has complied with the regulations, and the carrier is going to be able to count the leave against the employee's maximum PFL. So if it's available FMLA and PFL for the same qualifying event, they can be required to be taken at the same time.
All right, thanks, Courtney. I'm just going to jump in real quick. I see a question here. I forgot to mention, yes, we will be sending an email with a copy of this slide deck as well as a recorded presentation of this webinar. Make sure you're signed up for email updates so you get that notification when those are available. Might take a few days, a week or so. But again, if you're not subscribed for email updates, just go to the Paid Family Leave website and sign up. And then once we have those resources available to you, you'll know all about it.
Thanks, Adam. So the next question here is, can employers ask you to take intermittent PFL a certain way? For example, ask you not to take more than 1 day per week. So there's nothing in the PFL law or regulations prohibiting an employer from like discussing your PFL schedule with you. Like, they can discuss it with you, but generally speaking, the employee is able to choose whether or when to take PFL. As long as, it's either continuously or intermittently in increments of 1 full day. It's not available hourly. But if we're talking about intermittent days, generally the employee is going to be able to choose, and the employer can't abridge the right of the employee to take PFL if they're eligible for it. And another thing to keep in mind is that as long as you're giving appropriate notice to your employer, like, they're not the ones who are processing and paying or denying your request for PFL. That's going to be your employer's disability and PFL insurance carrier. So it's really not up to them. Okay, next question here is to make sure I understand clearly, PFL is not available for a grandparent to care for a grandchild due to a parent being called to active duty. So I'm gonna try to like break this down. I think what you're saying is if the employee is trying to take PFL because their child, so the parent of the grandchild, is called to active duty abroad, could you take PFL to care for the grandchild? And the answer is maybe. So I can't provide legal advice, but PFL for military leave is available for the employees if the employee's spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent of the employee is on active duty or has been called to an order of active duty abroad. So when we're talking about the family member, you may be taking the leave like to provide like urgent childcare or to arrange childcare or something like that. And yes, you're arranging the care for like your grandchild, but if we're talking about if the military member in question is your child, that could qualify for PFL. So hopefully I'm being clear here is if you are the employee, you might be eligible for paid family leave if your spouse, your domestic partner, your child, or your parents has been deployed abroad. So hopefully that's clear, is that you wouldn't be taking PFL for the grandchild. You would be taking it for your child, if that's what we're talking about here. But otherwise, a grandchild is not a covered, like if the grandchild was the one being deployed, the grandparent cannot take leave as the employee in that situation. Okay, next question here is when someone is out on PFL for taking care of a family member with a serious health condition, and then the illness changes because they get another diagnosis, do they have to reapply for PFL or not because it's the same person and it's maxed up to 12 weeks, or do they reapply the following year? So I can't give legal advice, which is going to be guidance about eligibility in specific situations. But generally, when we're talking about PFL for serious health condition, if the healthcare provider has certified a serious health condition and the employee is approved for leave, like even if another diagnosis comes up, there's no need for an employee to reapply because they've already been, the healthcare provider has already certified the need for care and they're already on PFL. And you're correct that there is only a maximum of 12 weeks of PFL in a 52-week period. And that 52-week period maximum, like it's 12 weeks regardless of how many qualifying events you have. So even if you have 15 family members who all have serious health conditions, for example, you're still going to be limited to the 12 weeks of PFL in a 52-week period. Okay, our next question here is, will there be updates to paid family leave when the prenatal law takes effect, or are those out now? So the paid personal prenatal leave, that is unrelated to paid family leave. It's part of the labor law. And it's in the same section as the paid sick leave. That takes effect in January 2025, but it is not related to paid family leave at all.
All right, that is all the questions we have. We're gonna hang on for a couple more minutes in case you think of anything. Again, feel free to type it into the chat box. But again, I do want to remind you that we are going to be providing you with a copy of the slide deck as well as a recorded version. We'll email you when those are available. They're going to be available on our website, and the recording will be on our YouTube page. In the meantime, if you need a refresher at any point, we do have some general paid family leave webinars, recordings, and the slide decks on our website as well and on our YouTube page, so you can always check those out. And as I mentioned, for the webinar, you're going to get an email update, but you can also receive email updates on paid family leave news, including information on future webinars, by also signing up at the website. As I mentioned, just go right to the bottom of the paidfamilyleave.ny.gov homepage and select Get Updates. We also distribute information on social media, so make sure you're following the Workers' Compensation Board on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you all for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.